Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. This is Cindy with another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have Lisa Srnka on. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Cindy. Thank you for having me.
So a couple of weeks ago, I went to a conference. I was invited to speak at a conference in Pittsburgh for autism moms. And when I was not speaking, I popped into a couple of the rooms and I popped into Lisa's room where she was speaking. And I said, oh, this is a really good subject. I have to get her on my podcast. And you were talking about stress and cortisol levels and things like that. I didn't catch the whole thing. I only kind of caught the tail end, like the last 10 minutes. So I'm very interested to hear what you talked to all the moms about, and we're going to kind of record it today. The reason that I'm interested in this is because I did a retreat weekend myself back in October for autism moms, and I kind of gave them what I always would have wanted. And it was very stressful raising my son. Between no sleeping, the constant hyperactivity, the damage, destruction to my house. And then, you know, when they go through puberty, it gets even worse. They become violent. He was going after my husband. Then he started having seizures, which resulted in 911 calls to the hospital and things like that. And I felt like we kind of had PTSD, you know, and it was stressful on my kids and my husband and all of us, right? So, because I've lived that, I know what other moms are living through. Okay. And so I wanted to have this weekend for them where they could just chill for a day and get massages to relax their body. I also believe that laughter does good like medicine. And I brought in a comedian. I thought it was important for them to laugh,
nice.
Right?
Exactly.
And just to make friends and just kind of bond as well, you know. And I was concerned about the cortisol levels. I had looked into a little bit, and I thought I found out that laughter helps, you know, with the cortisol levels. So that was my way of fixing it for a day. But I'm absolutely no expert in this at all, and I'd like to know more about it. So why don't you tell people what it is exactly that you do?
Sure. Well, I am a licensed family nurse practitioner in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I am also licensed in Florida for telehealth. So I also have postgraduate training in functional medicine with the Institute of Functional Medicine. It is the #1 training program postgraduate for healthcare providers. And I help people get to the root cause of their symptoms. We find out what is the actual driving force behind why they feel so bad. We replace their energy, we fix their gut, and as a result, we balance their hormones. And cortisol is one of those hormones that we balance. Mm-hmm. It's the stress hormone.
Yes, exactly. I many years ago, I started to develop a pain back here in between my shoulder blade and my spine, and it felt like I was being stabbed with a knife in there. And it would pop up every once in a while. And one day I was working, and the big boss of the company showed up unexpectedly, and I got the pain. And that's when I realized this is stress. This is some type of a stress response that I have going on here. And I think there's like a tendonitis or something back there and it flares up. And then when my son went into the group home, I had it like all summer long. I had the pain, you know, and I went to somebody that was helping me, and they, you know, to the chiropractor and all these people, and they're like, oh, stick a tennis ball back there and go up and down on the wall to kind of massage it out, you know, whatever. But that's just one little experience that I have of a stress response of physical pain in my body. So
exactly. Yeah. So this, I think what you're asking me is like, what are the signs that you are under, physical signs that you're under a lot of stress, right? Because you're right, they're called somatic or physical signs of stress. And those can be that there's so many of them, and they cross reference to acute symptoms like sleep disturbances, weight gain, Muscle fatigue. That is one of the things that I get a lot of people who come in to see me. They say, my muscles are so weak. And those are some of the things that are definitely signs that you are under a lot of physical stress, the fight or flight. It's a physical reaction, the fight or flight response. That is the response, that is the alarm state, right? You're under some sort of attack. Whether it is a perceived attack, there's a difference between perceived stress and a physical stressor. And we could talk about that in a little bit, but the body physically actually reacts to that. It causes your pupils to dilate. It causes your muscles to get very, very tense. It shuts down your GI system. It gets rid of libido. It stops you from urinating or urinating too much. So basically the brain says, we're not going to stop to eat. We have to be on high alert. So your muscles have to be ready. You're not going to have sex. So forget that. And there are all of these physical symptoms that happen when the stress response is enacted. If it goes on too long, then those symptoms now become chronic and they become more and more problematic.
Interesting.
Yeah, and people, that number one complaint when people come in to see me is oftentimes just general fatigue, muscle fatigue and weakness, and probably brain fog is the next one.
I was going to ask
clearly.
you about that. Can it affect your memory too?
Yeah, actually it can. It's very close related. Actual chronic stress can actually physically damage the brain. The amygdala is involved, which is a little gland inside of the brain, deep inside the brain. And so there can be real physical. Now, it can be reversed. So I don't want anybody to think, oh my gosh, I'm damaging my brain. And you are, but it can be reversed with lifestyle changes.
It can it can help you get your memory back?
Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called neuroplasticity. And there are some practitioners that really only focus on that. And you talked about PTSD. That is a real thing. I see a lot of people that have PTSD from a variety of reasons, but it also contributes. That emotional part is one of the drivers for sure. But some of the other drivers of chronic fatigue are hidden ones that we may not really think about. It's anything that sends a message of alarm to the brain. So if you have a food sensitivity, if you have a hidden infection in the gut, maybe you had food poisoning many, many years ago because you were traveling internationally. Those kinds of infections can stay hidden in the gut for a very long time and create a very kind of slow undercurrent of stress. So there's that immediate stress that you really can identify, and then there's these underlying currents of stress.
I think there's a lot of parents that probably already know they're under stress.
Yes.
Especially, you know, I mentioned these things a lot. There's a very high divorce rate among autism families. There's a lot of single moms raising kids alone. They're trying to balance, trying to work and get their kids to therapies and you know, take care of their kid, and then they're not sleeping at night and all this kind of stuff, and they're just under this constant state of stress. So how can we help them?
Yeah, exactly. So I had a very similar experience. I don't have an autistic child, but like a lot of people who come to see me, they're living in circumstances that are really not favorable. They're very high stress circumstances. Maybe they had significant childhood trauma, right? Or they're in an unhappy marriage, or they do have children who are special needs. And I call it my no shit Sherlock talk. So I had a situation very similar in my life, not a really great marriage, was running a business, had 2 little kids, extenuating circumstance with parents that had illnesses, and was being pulled in a million different directions. Went to my doctor because I felt lousy. I mean, seriously lousy. I couldn't read a sentence and remember what I read. I was scared. I was really, really scared. And so I went to my doctor, who is a good friend of mine, and he did all the tests, and everything's fine, Lisa. I don't know what to tell you. You're under stress. And I looked at him and I said, no shit, I'm under stress. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
And that's the question everybody asks. What we do is we very systematically, in functional medicine, we start in the gut and we evaluate the gut, because 70% of our immune system is housed in the gut. Nearly 90% of our feel-good hormones are made in our gut. So if we have something that is blocking our ability to absorb nutrients from our foods, if we have deficiencies, B deficiencies, D deficiencies, E or A deficiency, any nutritional or mineral deficiencies, all of those things contribute to that underlying imbalance and signal of alarm. So we start there. We evaluate the gut, we clean the diet, nothing out of a box or a bag, lots of fresh. And when we do that, we decrease the inflammatory response, which is also a stress response that enacts the stress response. We also, the next step up in the therapeutic order of treatment is supporting the adrenal glands, giving it the nutrients that it needs to kind of calm, and supporting the thyroid, because the thyroid and the adrenal response are so linked. They both start off with glands, the pituitary and the hypothalamus. They both start there and then they branch off. So they're closely linked. So I typically work on those two areas first. And we don't get to the emotional part until we've fixed sleep. And that can be difficult in a situation that you're talking about. So my clients and I work really very closely about how do we fix sleep in the situation that you're in. This is not about creating this kind of utopia, right? We have to deal with where you are, where you're living, what you're really truly living with. And when we do that, then a lot of things start to balance on their own. The stress level doesn't change, it's how you react, how your body reacts to the stress that changes, because you're feeding it good food, you're fixing sleep, which naturally detoxes you, and energy starts to come back. Thinking starts to become clearer. Anxiety starts to come down. So those are the first steps.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking about emotional eating, though. See, a lot of people eat feel-good foods, which are, creamy, carby, sugary,
yeah, exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Yes, food is complicated. I won't kid anybody. Food is a very complicated thing. And we deal with food in incremental steps. The first thing that we do is we pull out everything that would be causing your blood sugar to be like a roller coaster. Because when your blood sugar is like a roller coaster, anytime you have a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar, that is an alarm signal to the brain. So the first thing that we do is we try to stabilize blood sugar level. We do that with supplements. In that respect, we use something like alpha-lipoic acid, berberine. These two supplements are well known and well researched to help stabilize a blood sugar. And once we get rid of those kind of wild swings, and don't get me wrong, we do work on emotional stress management, but we don't do deep dive stuff. We do things like meditative breathing. Why? Well, it's free, it's portable, and I usually start people off as little as 3 minutes a day, because it's something you have to kind of really get into. I also help, I use healing frequencies. There's certain frequencies, sounds, that help people bring their anxiety down. So there's one song in particular, and again, it's a free thing. It's called Weightless by Marconi Union. You can get it on YouTube and you can run it for 10 hours on the TV, on your laptop, whatever. But the megahertz of that particular song have been clinically tested and have shown to reduce anxiety. So play it in the background, put it in your headset. So a lot of things that we can do, and we can work on these things multi-level, but at different levels of intensity until we start to get some stabilization, right? With sleep, with food, with anxiety, thyroid, all of those things. And what I have learned from my clients is that they have told me they just physically want to feel better first before we start dealing with the emotional aspect, because the emotional aspect is draining and it's scary, right? So one of the things that I do and I help clients is I help them to physically start to feel better. Then we start having the discussion about how do we handle this emotional part? And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that.
Do you send them to a therapist or something to deal with the emotional part?
Actually, yeah, I've actually started working with a therapist that practices rapid transformational therapy, or RTT, and that's a component of hypnosis and positive affirmations. And you can, depending on where you're listening or where you live, you can just type in RTT therapist, you'll find one. They are specially trained in using hypnotherapy, and it's very transformative because cognitive therapy, don't get me wrong, cognitive therapy and talk therapy has a place. But when we're dealing with a situation that we know what is the stressor, right? We don't have to discover what the stressor is. We really know what it is.
Right.
We
It's the
need
jerky husband or
right. Or whatever,
or whatever
the
it is.
job, whatever, you know,
Right.
You want tools to quickly turn the narrative and switch what the negative thinking that goes along with the activity or the experience.
Now it becomes the wonderful husband.
Yeah. Or it just is the way that you look at it and go, well, you know, it's kind of an endearing quality, not an irritating quality.
Right.
Things like that. I feel so strongly about RTT that I'm getting ready to do my own training in it because I think it's really important. And I think it's fun. I love different tools. I love to fill this virtual toolbox for my clients with stress because everybody's life is different. Not everything suits everyone. I am not a sit and hum meditator, mantra meditator. I'm a moving meditator. I like to move. I like to be outside. I like to do other things. And so those are the kind of discovery things that a functional medicine practitioner can help you with, because if somebody told me I had to go sit in the corner and meditate for 10 minutes, I would never do it. I just wouldn't. I know I have, my fiance is a meditation instructor, and he gave me homework one time and he said, for 10 minutes every day, I want you to sit in one place in a meditative pose. You can watch TV, you can read a book, I don't care, but you need to sit in that meditative pose. Couldn't do it. I did it.
Not even if you have not even with the TV on or anything. Jeez.
Nope. Couldn't do it.
You're worse than me.
I couldn't. I'm like, I got to do something else.
Yeah.
So I started walking. I started doing.
Yeah, there you go.
Breathing, walking meditation.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I also, I really believe that stress causes physical illness in the body. You know, it can just cause, you know, arthritis, heart attacks, all kinds of things. You know,
So
I believe a lot
that.
of the root is,
yeah.
You know,
so let's talk about that for a second, because you brought up autoimmunity, because that's what, there's joint pain that's involved.
Right.
Some of your listeners may have heard the term leaky gut. Have you heard that?
Yeah, sure.
So that's in
I think we've all heard it, but don't necessarily know what it means.
What it is. Right. So earlier I said that 70% of the immune system components are housed in the gut. One of the things that is housed in there is kind of like an invisible barrier called the secretory IgA or SIG-A. And what I tell people is if you've got the intestines, right? In the inside of the intestines, imagine a little saran wrap type covering. And when you're under chronic stress, whether it be emotional or any of those other things, sleep, food sensitivities, doesn't matter, hidden infection, that secretory IgA starts to lose its potency and gets little holes poked in it, kind of like a soaker hose, right? When we're soaking our garden, these little springs start. What that allows then is this intestinal permeability, a direct link between what's happening on the inside of the gut and what's happening in the bloodstream. So what's happening in the bloodstream can now get into the gut, and what's in the gut can get into the bloodstream. Well, we have a wonderful police force in the body called the immune system. And when they see something that doesn't go where it needs to go, they're on attack. That's autoimmunity, very simply. And one of the things that does contribute to that is the gut. I just did a lecture for my clients on seasonal allergies and how the gut is critical in immune function and making sure that you don't have an overactive immune function. Emotional stress is one of the top causes of intestinal permeability. Good news, intestinal permeability can be reversed. We can fix it. Takes a little time, and there's a very specific, it's called the 5R gut program that was developed by the Institute for Functional Medicine, a 5-step program that we use. And when we do that, we reverse it, and we can measure that. I measure everyone's secretory IgA level in their stool, and it gives us a little bit of insight as to how much, it doesn't really tell us a lot about the immune system per se, but it tells us whether or not that protective barrier is either heightened, it's inactivated, or it's starting to lose its potency. And it gives us an insight.
I know some adults that are naturally very kind of hyperactive, don't sleep well. As soon as they eat, they run to the bathroom. It just seems to be like they're always on this high stress level, and they may be ADD or something that's never been, ADHD, never been diagnosed, but I can think of a whole group of people that are kind of in that category. Medications that they've taken for things don't work. They have sort of an opposite effect. And now I'm seeing effects on their body of, arthritis and all these kind of things, which all are caused to me by inflammation, right? They got a lot of inflammation going on.
Right.
And a lot of them are Italian, which means they love to eat their pasta and their carbs and stuff all the time,
Wheat.
right?
Yes.
Yes, the wheat, right? And so I'm thinking it's like it's a whole conundrum here that I'm trying to think, how do you fix all of this? Because it just seems that they're just naturally wired that way. Their body's just always under stress, and they've been that way their whole life. And if you tell them, we're going to take your pasta away, I think that would create even more stress to tell people that have never eaten fruit or vegetables their whole life that, oh, no, that's all you're allowed to eat now. They'll be like,
Yes, absolutely. So that I get that a lot. First of all, when people come into me and when they start working with functional medicine practitioner, one of the things that we look at are genetics, epigenetics. What was your family? What kind of genetic plate did you bring, right? And then we look at childhood. And when people tell me I have always been anxious, one of the things I immediately think of are the genetic vulnerabilities. I do evaluate nutrigenomics, which are, if somebody has a 23andMe, if somebody has an ancestry.com, you can get the raw data. And if you want to, you can reach out to me and I can have a special offer for your clients that allow, or your listeners, that allow you to take that raw data and I can do a very specific genomic report and we can do an evaluation, because there are specific genetic vulnerabilities that cause you not to make serotonin or dopamine effectively. Would you be surprised to hear that people who have this, what I call a sensitive anxiety response, right? They're just highly empathic and they take the energy in when they come in the room, you know, nutritionally, B3 and B6 are needed at plus 5-HTP and tryptophan. Those ingredients are the serotonin ingredients to make serotonin. If you have a nutritional deficiency of B6 or B3, you don't have enough of it, you're never going to make enough serotonin. If you have a genetic vulnerability in converting your amino acids, which is 5-HTP, which is a protein, and a tryptophan, which you get from protein, if you can't convert it into those ingredients, you will never make enough serotonin. Then let's just complicate the conversation. And let's say your doctor puts you on a antidepressant. And what does an antidepressant do? Most of them are called SSRIs, which there is a little mechanism when you make serotonin, you make enough of it, you have to get it into the neuron, and then anything that's left over is asked to kind of go back into the other neuron and it's a recycling situation. Serotonin is so precious that the body doesn't want to waste any that it makes. But what a SSRI does is it forces your body to keep picking up serotonin. However, in order to do that, the little serotonin molecule must hang out in a place called a synapses. It's not in the neuron, but it's just kind of hanging out there to be picked up, kind of like the claw machine, you know, in those games. The body has a police force again that comes in and says to that serotonin molecule, you either go in that neuron or you get back into the recycling bin. And if you don't, I'll destroy you. So what typically happens for people who are on antidepressants, they'll work for about 3 months, and then you have depleted all of your serotonin recycling reserve. Imagine this. You don't have enough ingredients to make serotonin because you can't absorb your nutrients. You maybe have a genetic vulnerability. We don't know. And then you're on a medication that is forcing you to use all of your recycling reserve. You got 3 strikes against you.
Right.
You're always anxious. It's not working.
Right.
Those are some of the root causes.
One of the people that I'm talking about, when the doctor put him on an antidepressant and made him depressed, like opposite effect. Right.
So that would, to me, I would probably think that, again, the nutrient vulnerability or the genetic vulnerability. I took some training with a doctor called Dr. Greenblatt. He's an MD psychiatrist, and he treats anxiety, depression, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, but he uses a functional medicine approach along with pharmaceuticals. We know that people who have those types of tendencies are often extremely B3 and B6 deficient. When we measure them, they're usually always deficient.
And what can cause that? The deficiency is just genetic, or it's diet, or both?
It can be both. It can be both. Yeah.
What natural foods can you find that in?
Oh, the green leafies,
Mm.
the
Right. So
spinaches,
somebody
the
that won't eat
kales.
anything green.
Yeah, well, that's okay. You know how I get around that? Let me
Mm.
tell you how I get around that. I've got a son who's 23 years old, or sorry, he's 24 now. His idea of a vegetable was ketchup.
Yeah, that's
Um,
my son.
if he saw us, to this day, Cindy, when he
Uh-huh.
comes home, when he visits, because he's an adult now, when he
Mhm.
visits, and I have a salad on the table, I literally get, oh, you're gonna make me eat a salad. And I'm like, yeah. So
Yeah.
no, there are those green drinks out there. There are the
Mm.
superfoods, the green drinks, as
Mhm.
long as they're organic, good quality green drinks.
Mhm.
No, is it, if it comes from whole food, there's plenty of them out there, like athletic greens. There's all kinds of different ones. If you're not going to sit down and eat a fruit and a vegetable, but you're willing to do a green drink, do the green drink. Do the
Okay.
green
Got it.
drink. Yeah.
Okay. Any particular
Incorporate.
ones that you like?
The only thing that I would have you look for is to make sure that they are, the ingredients are whole food source. In other words, they're coming from actual whole foods
Mhm.
and not processed. And you can tell that on the website. You want to look for whole food, organic green drinks.
Mhm.
Some of them can be pretty expensive. So you want to make sure you have a really good quality one. I don't have any affiliation with any of, I think there are a couple of the IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine practitioners that recommend things like athletic greens. If people are using things like Shakeology, they have a lot of that in there. So there's a lot of commercially prepared ones.
Mhm. Shakeology sounds like that would have all kinds of processed stuff in it, but I guess not.
Yeah, they're probably more processed than athletic greens.
Got it.
Things like that, but they're super green food drinks.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can also take you could take vitamins too. I mean,
You could take
right? Or a B12
vitamins.
shot or something, or
Yeah,
what is that? The other
you
one
could
on your
do.
tongue.
Yeah, so those are, one of the things in functional medicine is, yes, you can do that, but that's like taking an Advil for a headache. You never got to the root cause
Mm.
of what the headache was. If you really want to get to the root cause of why are you B deficient, why are you mineral deficient, why are you vitamin deficient, that's where the functional medicine kind of deep dive gets you that answer.
Mhm. Mm. All right. So what are some of the other things that you talked about at the convention with the moms?
So, yeah, so the top three things, what I talked about at the presentation at the Autism Conference was, there is a really quick way to kind of get a score on where you're at, how imbalanced are you, and where do you start looking, right? And for clients, for people who can't work with me in person, we kind of go through the same worksheets that we did at the workshop, which is you get a score of kind of a home inspection because your body is a fixer-upper, right? And we kind of go through that. And then from there, typically the top three things I tell people to do if you want to start right today is, number one, fix your sleep. How do you do that? Well, I have a sleep quiz. I have a sleep questionnaire that gives you some insight to where your sleep may be out of balance. And I have some real quick start things that you can do today to fix your sleep. Decrease your blue light, computers, screen time, get blue light blocking glasses. Have a nighttime routine. I really, truly like people to carve out at least, if they can, 45 minutes of an Epsom salt bath, listening to the healing frequency, the anti-anxiety frequency, candles, deep breathing, all of that. You can use some melatonin as well. There's a very specific way to dose melatonin, and I give that in my tips. And then, so you want to fix your sleep. That's number one. Number two, you want to stabilize your blood sugar. So we want to pull anything that is, I don't know if you've ever heard the term high glycemic foods. So foods that have impact the blood glucose spikes your insulin, are the foods that we want to avoid. And there is a list. It's super easy to find. I have a list of them. People can reach out to me and get a list, or you can Google it, high glycemic foods. And you want to stabilize your blood sugar. Typically, I tell people nothing out of a box or a bag. Eat the rainbow on your plate. And I don't mean Skittles. I mean, eat. When I tell people like, oh, I can just eat Skittles. No, that's not what I'm saying. I want lots of color on your plate. And when you look at your plate, say, what on here will harm me? What on here will heal me? There's plenty of documentaries out there like Fork Over Knives. There's a documentary called Heal, Heal, on Netflix. They talk about all of these lifestyle things that impact. So there's a lot of resources out there. That's number 2. And of course, number 3.
Wait, so are you saying that you shouldn't be eating a bowl full of ice cream before you go to bed?
No, you shouldn't. No, you should be having, actually, you should be having, if you want to have a snack before you go to bed, because if your blood sugar goes very low, it will wake you up, is a higher fat, good fat. I usually tell people gluten-free avocado toast.
Really?
Is a good snack. About an hour before you go to bed.
Okay.
If you have
what about guac? Guac is made out of avocados.
Yeah. I mean, and if you want to do, organic corn, like a blue corn chip, or, even better yet, if you could do fresh veggies like celery, cucumbers, carrots, things like that with your guacamole.
Okay.
As opposed to a processed food, right?
Right.
So nothing out of a box or a bag, and eat the rainbow, get your blood sugar nice and steady. And then the last thing is the stress management. What can you do right now? Meditative breathing. You can go onto YouTube and find 4 square breathing, or there's all kinds of little breathing exercises that you can do. Because what breathing does is it helps to activate the polyvagal nerve, which shuts down that anxiety response. And it helps to move you into the fight or flight and into the rest and reset. It's free, it's portable, you can do it anywhere. There's meditative breathing apps. I mean, I have an app on my phone called the Mindfulness Bell. Every hour, a gong goes off from my phone. I stop what I'm doing, and I take 3 or 4 deep breaths, and it recenters me. Super easy to do and free. And then the other thing is the healing frequencies. That's really, really helpful. And then another thing that I tell people to do, if they can't get out and do meditative walking, 10 minutes of meditative yoga in the morning or at night, you choose, because it helps move you, get you moving. But yoga focuses on the breath. So you're doing 2 things at once. All those things are super free. You don't need anybody. You just need a little bit of motivation. And typically people, once you start doing it, you feel better. You've done some self-care. You talked about that at the very beginning of our talk. Having time for self-care is really important. But when you have a life situation, a family situation where it's hard to carve out that time, I always ask people, start slow, start low. You can carve out 3 minutes. You can carve out 10 minutes, right? And even if you can't do 10 minutes, give me 5. I'm not asking, I don't expect anybody to change their life like that,
Right. Start with one thing.
Yeah, start with one thing. Start with one thing. The other thing is seek out a functional medicine practitioner, someone who has been trained in functional. You can go to the ifm.org website, type in your zip code, and you can get a list of practitioners that are certified. Some are certified, some have gone through training. They tell you exactly what they've done. It's the gold standard for functional medicine right now.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in functional medicine just over the years too. I just don't believe in just running to the doctor and getting a pill, because like you said, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on. It's not curing the root problem of why you're sick in the first place.
Exactly. I was trained in the allopathic Western medicine model, and it is very well equipped to identify acute situations. Believe me, we need Western medicine to a certain extent, but when a symptom goes from being acute now into chronic, Western medicine isn't exactly equipped to deal with chronic conditions and reversing them. But there is a place for it. And I always ask people who work with me that they have a primary care physician, that if we find anything acute, we do have to go down that path and make sure we're not dealing with anything that we have to immediately deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we resume our functional medicine approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you kind of need both. Like, I'm not telling someone that has high blood pressure to stop taking your high blood pressure medication.
Oh, no.
That's
no.
not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that I think
Yeah.
a lot of things are, bad habits and bad diet and, all these kind of, and stress and all these kind of things that are being piled onto your body. And then you just want to go to a doctor and say, here, give me a pill and take it all away. I'm like, no, let's. Let's deal
That's
with
a
what's
very
really
good
going on.
point. That is a really good point that you just brought up. And that point is that functional medicine approach or a lifestyle medicine approach does require work on your part and dedication. But when you have a partner, I have a health coach, I have an IFM trained health coach that helps guide people. What I tell people is, you and I will put together the plan. The health coach helps you execute the plan.
Right.
So if you can find a health coach that will guide you through it, you can typically, if you are pretty diligent with a lifestyle plan, you can typically really get feeling really good in 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's relatively short.
Mm-hmm.
But that, and of course, that's saying we didn't find anything kind of, super complicated. But yeah, typically people feel super great within 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm really happy to hear that certain things are reversible too. I mean,
Type
that's
2
great.
diabetes can be reversed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that can be done. But it is not for everybody. You're right. Because there are
Well, a lot
times
of
when-
people are set in their ways and they're stubborn and they just don't want to make changes. They just don't.
Right. And then functional medicine would not be right for you.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that having an open mind, having the willingness to change, finding a functional medicine practitioner who understands that they have to meet you where you're at, right? And working within your preferences, your lifestyle. Again, food is very complicated. We brought food up a couple of times. It's cultural, it's emotional, it's celebratory. It helps with grief. It's necessary, right? It's just necessary for life. And it's not like other substances that get abused where you can say, look, I can't have that drink, I can't have that drug. You have to have food to live, right? So it is a complicated thing. And I always tell people, don't beat yourself up. The other thing that, very interestingly enough, is that there are some genetic vulnerabilities that dictate which food plans your body likes. I don't know if you know that.
No.
So there's a couple of genetic vulnerabilities. One is called the FTO gene, and it's nicknamed the fatso gene. I have it.
It's so interesting you're bringing this up because I've hit a certain age now where I've put on 20 pounds and I'm very frustrated that I can't get it off. And then I'm looking at both of my grandmothers and I'm like, Yeah, they were not skinny women. They were not. And I'm like, is this genetic? Is this just what happens? You hit this age and boom, they turn into your grandmother? I don't know.
The answer is yes, and the answer
Ugh.
is no. It's not what happens when you hit that age. Okay, so let me give you an example. I have
Well, I
the
know it's
gene,
hormones too, you know.
well, partly hormones, however, and this cortisol does affect that, right? Cortisol does affect whether or not, because when your cortisol level's high, you lay down abdominal fat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a whole nother discussion. Insulin resistance is a whole nother discussion. And I can talk about that millions of, but very quickly, the FTO gene, which I have, and my son has, my other son has, who's 26,
Mhm.
when he's under a lot of stress, he's very resistant to weight loss. And he's an athlete, right? What we found out and what we know about the FTO gene is that you must be on 22 grams or lower of fat per day.
Hmm.
So he does not do well on a ketogenic diet. Neither do I.
Hmm.
When I switched to a 22 gram or lower of fat a day, I've lost 15 pounds easily, got
Wow.
it off, kept it off. But see, it's what my body genetically prefers. I have a lot of obesity in my family, a lot. My brother, my mother, my aunt, a lot of people.
Mhm.
It is genetic.
Mhm.
And I have this gene. So does my son. But we know about it now, and we know what our body prefers. But
Interesting.
there are other genetic markers that talk about how do you process glucose? How do you have a tendency to want to eat in between meals, emotional eating? So genomics can tell us a lot long term because your genes don't change. However, you can turn genetic vulnerabilities, like, I don't want to say like off and on, but you can enhance them or turn them down based on what you're doing with your food, your lifestyle, your exercise.
So if somebody comes to see you, you'll test their genetics and you could tell if they've got this.
I can. Yeah, I
That's
can
so
do it.
cheap.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's a nice insight. I'll tell you that.
Mhm.
It can move the needle quickly, especially for weight loss. So yeah, cardiovascular health, immune health, exercise tolerance, all of those things really can help.
Very interesting.
And so not everybody has to be a full-on functional medicine client to get their genomic report. I do offer a 1-hour evaluation for genomics on my website. The only thing that you have to have before coming to the appointment, you have already had to have like a 23andMe or an Ancestry.com. And then I give you the instructions on how to get your raw data. And then I run the report, and then we sit down and reevaluate it.
Oh, okay.
And I can do that online. I don't have to do that in person.
Okay. Now you're located in Pennsylvania, right?
I am located in Pennsylvania.
And then, does somebody have to be from Pennsylvania for you to work with them?
In a functional medicine capacity, yes. Or you can be located in Florida because I have a telemedicine license in Florida.
But what about for the genomic testing that we're talking about?
The genomic testing can be really anywhere.
Okay, so anybody can write into you, and if they've done their 23andMe, they've already done that blood work, and then you can.
Yep, because that's a consultation. And I can offer some special offers for your listeners for their genomics, for in-person, either one of those. And then certainly if people want to just kind of reach out to me and have a discussion about even how to take the home inspection worksheet and that whole protocol that I had at the Autism Conference, I have an ability to do that too.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you for your contact info at the end, but I have one other question. Alcohol, because that's how a lot of people like to deal with stress. They want to have their glass of wine at the end of the night and that type of thing, right? And I find that, just mentioning kind of ADHD and stuff like that, I learned years ago that people like that tend to self-medicate. They're trying to slow things down, calm things down in their world, whatever. And also, just talking about genetics, if you have an autistic child, it's very possible that there could be some issues in the parents as well that maybe they don't know, whatever. But I know a lot of mommies like to have their wine. And also, for me, I like to have it at night because it slows me down and makes me tired, to go to bed. And I know it's not a good habit, but let's talk about alcohol a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And not only people who have high anxiety medicate with alcohol, but as women go into perimenopause, and when they're in that process of going into menopause, anxiety goes up because estrogen becomes unopposed, and estrogen is a driver to anxiety. And we tend to use alcohol. A lot of women in perimenopause, not even worried about what's going on in family life, they will use alcohol to do that. So I always tell people, don't feel bad. A lot of people do it. What we have to work on with alcohol is that fact that it is creating those wild swings in your blood sugar. That is doing more damage, as well as the alcohol is doing damage, obviously. There are other things that we can use to bring your cortisol level down and your anxiety down. We can use things like progesterone sustained release, which brings calming down. We can use a supplement called phosphatidylcholine, which brings that down. We can use also another supplement called inositol, which helps not only to use the serotonin, which brings down your anxiety, but is also relaxing at night. And we partner that with another one called L-theanine. All of those things bring your cortisol level down to bedtime level, reducing your anxiety, and you can pull out alcohol. And we do that in the first 30 days with the mini elimination diet. And I will tell you what I have noticed about alcohol just for myself. When, like around the holidays or celebration, and I have alcohol, what happens to me is well, first of all, I don't sleep very well. I have a very restless night's sleep. And I wake up with joint pain. It's a joint inflammatory driver for me.
Really?
And when I pull out alcohol, in fact, I said to myself just the other day, because it was Memorial Day, right? Picnics and stuff like that. And I had 2 nights where I just horrible night's sleep. Joint pain when I woke up, my elbows hurt. I couldn't exercise. And I remember saying to myself, you have got to detox from this, and you will absolutely not have any alcohol for the next whatever. Slept like a baby. Didn't do anything else. But what happens is when we do the mini elimination diet and we pull those things out and symptoms start to go away, and what happens in the elimination diet, we reintroduce foods, right? We pull those foods out, we make the immune system stand down, it's not reacting anymore. And then we reintroduce foods. And we find out your food triggers and what happens when you have that food. So if you want to reintroduce alcohol and all of a sudden your anxiety goes up and you have joint pain and you can't sleep, and now you're hungry, you're hangry, and you're eating things that you shouldn't eat, those are all signs that that's a trigger. Typically, when I can prove to people that they have a reaction when they eat something, they understand. There's a price to pay. You can eat it, but there's a price to pay.
Right.
So like cow's milk, I had one client just recently. She didn't think cow's milk was a problem. She pulled it out. She put it back in. She ended up with a neck ache, a urinary tract infection, and she was angry.
Wow.
She called me and she said, I cannot believe I am having these symptoms. What do I do? And I said, well, you stop eating it, right? We waited 2 days. I think it took her 3 days. All symptoms were gone within 3 days. Everything was gone.
Hmm.
So then we talked and she said, I'm like having a little funeral that I'll probably never eat ice cream again. And I'm like, you can, but you have to understand that this is a food trigger for you. And if you want to do that, there's a price to pay.
Mhm.
And as long as you have a detox plan, like I want to get back on track. And a lot of what I do in functional medicine is just educating people on how their body's responding.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of discovery. It's fun. And people are empowered because now they know,
Right.
like, I know what's happening and I know what I can do to change it.
Right. I'm thinking of there's a TikTok video that a couple people have replicated, and it says, I don't. The doctor told me to eliminate everything that causes stress in my life, and they're kicking the kids out and the husband.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm like, well, okay, so that's not the answer.
Well,
We can't kick them all out. So
exactly. When I had, I'll go back to my no shit Sherlock
Mhm.
talk with my doctor. And he's like, you're under stress. Take your dog for a walk. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you know what? I will not have any stress in my life when I'm 6 feet under. Okay.
Right.
Give me something else to work with. Yes, I know there's stress. It's it's how you deal with it. It's how nurtured is your body? Are your mineral and vitamin deficiencies corrected? Then those stressors don't bring you down as much as they did when you were out of balance,
Right.
right? You can handle it a little bit better. I can't take away what's happening in your life, but I can help your body respond better
Right. Exactly.
than what it's responding right now. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. All right. Wonderful. Thanks, Lisa, so much. That was very informative. How can people contact you if they would like to talk to you?
Yeah, exactly. So you can go to my website, www.solutionsfmc.com. And my website, I don't engage a whole lot in social media. I do have a Facebook page and Instagram, and we're working on doing a lot more posts, but to have a direct conversation with me, you can, right now, my consults are complimentary. In June, they're going to a paid consult because I am going to start.
It's June now, though. It's June.
Oh, June, mid-June. Towards,
Oh,
and
mid-June,
I'll
okay.
make an announcement. It's
Okay.
going to go mid-June. It's going to be like $17, and I'm going to be doing a charitable contribution. I think that local food insecurity and things like that. So we'll be working on charitable contributions through the complimentary consult. And I'm really excited about that because I really want to enhance my community. And yeah, they can schedule a 15-minute consult on the phone with me and get all kinds of questions asked. I have a virtual tour on my website as well called the VIP tour. And you can register for that free. Talks about what functional medicine is, what does it look like to work with a functional medicine practitioner. So I try to be really informative to give people some insight.
Wonderful. All right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Really
Cindy.
appreciate you being with us today and learning from you. And I think that's great. I think you gave us some helpful tips.
There's hope. That's my message.
Give up the ice cream.
My final message is there's hope.
Yes.
There really, truly is there hope. So I wish you all the best and namaste.
Thank you. All right. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to close up. Okay. Thanks so much. Bye-bye. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.